we noticed a drop off in quarter four, and I expected that to continue into quarter one, but oh no, I've been completely surprised. Quarter one has started like the first half of last year. We have seen increasing numbers of inquiries. We've seen increasing numbers of visits and also sales. So we're just over halfway through the month of January. We've had our best January on record. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of the La Piedra podcast with me, Sean Woolley from Cloud9 Spain, and Mark Stücklin from Spanish Property Insight. For those of you who don't know Mark, he's one of the top, I would say, commentators on the Spanish property market. He has a very informative website and keeps people abreast and up to date of what's happening with the data from the authorities in Spain, and so that you can make informed choices based on what's been happening and also on what I'm going to tell you, which is kind of what's happening here on the ground, and maybe get our crystal ball out and look into the future. So we hope between us we can cover most of it. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a little look at what's happened at the start of the year. We're going to be focusing on the new development market because it's a thriving market. We're always asked about new developments by clients. So we're going to have a look at that and see where it's been and where it may be heading. And then we're going to finish with a question from one of Mark's followers, which is very interesting, actually, because it brought to mind some examples that I can give. So we'll do that at the end. And we promise we'll keep it a little bit shorter this month. We know that we had so much to talk about there, Mark, didn't we?
Well, no, I think the problem is we're both real windbags.
Yeah. Speak for yourself. No, we are. And so we're gonna limit it to half an hour because I listen to podcasts when I'm kind of getting ready in the morning, and maybe when I'm having a shower, I've got them on, and certainly when I'm driving. But I think half hour is a good time.
It's the right length. Yeah,
absolutely. So, Mark, any news, anything happening that we need to know about from the perspective of the data? What's going on?
In general, there's been a downturn that, as far as the data that we have, which obviously lags what's going on today, but there was a downturn in the final quarter of last year, and so but there was inevitable. It had been booming for a long time, and a downturn of sort of a settling down or a downturn had to come along sometimes. So that's going to be showing up in the figures. But just focusing on the new market, so those are newly built homes and their sales in Spain, which used to be back in the boom years and the construction boom. We're talking in 2005, 6, 7. I mean, we're old timers. We are constantly referring back to that period, halcyon days. In fact, it was a terrible time. It was a very unhealthy period for the market and lots of things. But we've got into it a bit in our previous conversations. But the amount, Spain was building a huge amount and selling. A lot of sales were taking place off plan, and the market was I don't know, I need to look it up, but I'm assuming it was close to 50% or even more in some provinces of the housing market. Then, of course, came the crash, and as I explained once before, housing starts, the new home building market collapsed by 97%. So home building in Spain almost disappeared for about 5 years. It's been recovering since about 2015. And then the latest figures I can see, sales in Malaga province new homes were 15% of the market in Malaga province.
Okay, yeah.
It would have been much bigger. It's been much bigger in the past. It's now back, and it's been much smaller in the more recent past, but it's now back to around 15% of the market. But that's looking at figures which lag the actual market because it doesn't include off-plan sales.
Is there a healthy percentage that it should be? So if someone said, what's a healthy percentage of new build sales in terms of the whole market, is there a point at which you think, okay, that's good, or that's too toppy, or are there any warning signs when it gets a bit over the top?
It's a very good question, and this is because sometimes there's a speculative building boom, and so you get too many I mean, well, there's another thing, which is housing starts or housing completion. So new homes built as a percentage of the housing inventory. And there's always, if it depends on demographic, population increase or decrease, depends on the age of the housing stock. There must be, for each country, an optimum level of house building whereby they're replacing an aging housing stock or building for new demand. And so you don't get these tightness and these problems in the housing market where it becomes unaffordable and people, it becomes a real problem for the society. And you see that clearly in the United Kingdom, where they've been underbuilding for decades. It creates trouble, real trouble, and it makes housing very political. And so, in answer to, I don't know I'd love to know, but I think it varies from country to country and depends on its specific demographics and its housing stock and the age and quality of that. Because, you could have lots of houses, but they're kind of cave houses or old, built 200 years ago, pokey, small, without, that's, people don't want to live in that.
And I guess when you're looking at like the Malaga province or Andalusia as a whole, we can't delve in detail to kind of separate the local market to the second home market, can we? So again, I guess there's two different forces at play for each of those markets, depending on the time and the economics of it all.
Different segments need different types of housing and need a different level of house building to keep up with demand. So when demand's growing, and unfortunately, because there's big lag, between getting conceiving of a project, getting planning approval, to purchasing the land and getting the financing, and by the time you're actually delivering, handing over keys to the front door, it's for years later. So this is a big one of the risks of the house building industry, is that it's difficult to time the market. People start building, and by the time they've got their products ready, the demand has peaked and is declining. It makes it a riskier business than other industries where you can ramp up production very quickly in response to demand or
absolutely.
Or back.
It's interesting because I was looking at a report, I think it's from S&P, but they were quoting a report from Colliers, which is quite a well-known and well-respected property consulting firm. And they were saying that the real estate market in the province of Malaga has been experiencing frenetic activity in 2022, which is something that we've said, but the pace will slow down in the coming quarters due to the tightening of financing conditions by banks. And that was a report published, I think, last week or the week before. It stated that Malaga presents, in the case of the new housing segment, the second highest absorption rate in the country, with a rate of 134%, only surpassed by 154% in the Balearic Islands, and ahead of the range of 70 to 79% presented by places such as Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Seville. This rate shows that all the homes that are built and delivered in Malaga province are quickly absorbed by demand, including any stock that may have remained from previous months. So they're saying that the report reflects that the spectacular behavior of the Malaga case is due to both a significant increase in demand and a certain reduction in production in recent months, something linked to the uncertainties around construction costs, which we mentioned last time, and the delay which is still accumulating due to the stoppage that occurred in some works during the pandemic. Interesting, isn't it? It backs up what you're saying, that the amount of new builds has been high in 2022, just tailing off a little bit towards the end of the year in terms of probably the absorption rate. But that absorption rate is pretty high, isn't it? And it actually backs up what we're experiencing on the ground, where, normally speaking, if you've got a fairly level market which is behaving itself as you would expect, you would always expect that in off-plan developments, there would always be a choice of stock. So you always get the first people in there, maybe wanting to secure the best prices and the best units. And then if things go steadily, if sales go steadily, there should be availability all the way through the construction phase, obviously diminishing stock, but there should be availability pretty much until the whole thing is launched. And the developer obviously wants to sell them quickly, but we are noticing that there's hardly any choice. We've got developments that are selling out after 6 months of release, so they're not even getting to putting the roof on and it's sold out, or We're getting a lot of clients saying, yeah, I love that development, but they've only got 2 units left and they're both grotty because they face the wrong way and blah, 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 blah. So we're getting a situation where clients are either being forced into a resale market because they can't find what they want that's new and they don't want to wait, or they're having to do things like a self-build to get exactly what they want and have some control over it, or they're having to go into an off-plan market, but on day one and wait for 2 or 3 years. They're the options open to a lot of people who want new stock. It's quite interesting right now.
That's interesting. Yeah, that really is interesting. So sounds like completed developments. So you can buy a new home, you can get the keys within weeks or a few months. You don't have to wait for a long kind of build out.
Yeah.
Although at that stage of the market of the product, you get less customization. And in recent years, there's been much more customization, which people really like. You know, they get to choose floor plans and other things, which in the past it was just take it or leave it. This is the way it's been designed, and lump it. So
and of course also people who are happy to buy like a resale on a new development, so something that's maybe a few months old. Of course, what you've got to recognize is that you're probably going to pay a premium on the price that the previous person has paid, because they were the ones that invested on maybe day one or month one, and they paid the early price from the developer. And what you're doing, okay, you're getting something that's ready and able to move into, but you're probably paying a premium over that price because you're not prepared to wait. And that's the compromise, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But do you get the sense that there's so that's for the almost finished, completed construction completion, or close to, so you can, but you don't have to have this long off-plan period with stage payments. You can almost sort of complete and reserve and complete in a short period of time, and you get possession. And presumably the community is already up and running. But what about completely off-plan? So literally, there's nothing. They haven't even broken ground yet. I don't know if they're even selling like that anymore down there. Are they?
They are, because we're although there's a lot of developments, a lot of them are quite small and boutique, so we don't have a huge amount of stock to offer people. People think,
where are you talking? Let's frame it first of all. You're talking from which part of the coast?
Pretty much from Malaga down to Sotogrande. So for instance, Sotogrande is a really good example because we're getting a lot of clients who want to be in Sotogrande. The school is one of the best, if not the best, on the Costa del Sol. So a lot of wealthy families are looking to move to Sotogrande year round and to put the kids in the school. And a lot of them are coming over ideally with this September in mind. And so they're looking for somewhere that they can buy. And there's only, I think, 2 or 3 off-plan projects that offer all the bells and whistles, all the toys that people want. We're talking about expensive stock. We're talking about 3-4 bed penthouses between 1 and 2 million euros, for instance. So it's a villa alternative, which a lot of clients want, particularly if they're new to the area. They don't want to get bogged down with a villa at this stage. They want somewhere easy to maintain. They can walk the kids to school, very, very straightforward. But they've either got to wait or they've got to rent, and the rental market is getting squeezed because we've got this influx of people. So it's a very interesting market, a kind of lack of new stock and a high demand from quite a demanding client base. And it's interesting because, as I say, the alternatives for people are wait, rent, buy something that might not be quite right, or move out of area and think again. And you would think people we get people with fantastic budgets, and they come to us and they give us their wish list, and you think, in normal terms, you think, yeah, great client, we can do this. And you go out into the market and start searching around, and it's like, actually, this market is tight. And it comes as a great surprise to a lot of people.
So that's Sotogrande, but generally speaking, for the coast, is there a good selection of projects which are for sale off plan, but just nothing finished and ready to move into now? Or is it everything new is now? Because there was a period, correct me if I'm wrong, a few years ago, especially around Estepona, where, Marbella is a different story because it's such a minefield. I don't know, it seems to me you've got to have real, guts to build in the Marbella municipality because of the planning situation was so uncertain for so long, and therefore that was in a way good for and that under the Gil years and under his subsequent corrupt town hall periods, there was uncontrolled building, and that was bad for Marbella. But then there's been, if I'm not wrong, years of almost nothing built because just people couldn't take the risk, and that so in a way it's been stuck in it's been frozen.
Yes.
New building in Marbella's municipality, not the surroundings, but that kind of pushed it out to places like Estepona and down the road.
Benahavis. Exactly. Very much so. So Benahavis and Estepona have really, they're the ones that have benefited most in terms of the sort of California of Europe, Marbella worldwide brand thing. Because you're right, in Marbella, it's been very, very difficult to make a start. I mean, some developers had these things in the pipeline and they're coming to fruition now. So, but even now, when we get a new development announced in Marbella, we're like, first of all, we're like, really? And then secondly, we're all over it from a legal point of view to make sure that, they've got the permissions and they've got all the licenses in place. I think the days of sticking a flag in the ground and saying, new development, come on, give us your deposits. I think those days are gone for a lot of reasons. Long gone. But you're right. You do have to make sure that licenses are in place. If licenses aren't in place, then and so a bank guarantee can't be issued for your funds. You need to make sure that the funds aren't going to the developer, that they're going to your lawyer, who can keep a close check on them until such time as either the developer gets their bank guarantee and gets their license, in which case your money is protected, or the developer can't get the necessary documentation, in which case your money is refunded to you. So that's just a little tip for the off-plan market. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Estepona, Benahavis, a lot of these developments, a lot of investors and a lot of buyers, they get in there on day one and they choose the best units, and they're the ones that are prepared to wait. And it might suit a lot of people to wait. They're the ones that are prepared to wait 18 months to 2.5 years for the whole thing to be finished. But we do get a lot of people who want something of that quality. They want something that's new and shiny, but they don't want to wait. And I think since COVID, we all know now how long 2 years, 2.5 years feels. And it was a bit of a drag, wasn't it? And I think it's given us a sense of our own mortality. And I know,
also, the older you get, the more value 2 years is.
Absolutely. And we get a lot of people, and they say it jokingly. They might be in their 50s or 60s, and they say, I haven't got 2 or 3 years to wait. And you think, oh my God, because I'm 53. But it does sort of bring it home to you that, if I've got 20 years left on the planet, 2 or 3 is a long time in the grand scheme of things. So I think, and what actually we're doing now as well is we're trying to bridge that gap, because of course the problem with these new developments is that you do have to wait. And the glossy brochures look amazing, and you can look forward to moving in there. And as I say, it suits some people to wait, whether the kids are going to school in the UK, for instance, and then they want to move over. But we're getting involved in eco builds, where developments can be built, or certainly villas can be built without the traditional brick and block structure, but in a almost like a prefabricated block. That's then you build it up into a wall, and then you build the wall, and then you infill with concrete. And you can build about 4 or 5 times faster with this method. And it brings the construction time down from sort of 18 months to 6 months on a house. And 6 months is palatable for a lot of people. 18 months isn't. So we're getting quite heavily involved with that kind of development to overcome that objection about the timescales. Because it's something that people can put the deposit down, they can reserve the property, and then they haven't got long. It's 6 months and it's done, and then they can take possession. And that's attracting a lot of interest, I think, because it's not much cheaper, but it saves money because of time. So it's certainly, you get your product in a shorter amount of time, but you also get an A-rated efficiency certificate. You're not really paying for any energy bills, which of course is massively appealing at the moment in the current climate. So that's something we're really focusing on, because we see that as the future. Of course, there's been resistance to it from the Spanish authorities. It took a long time for the building system to be approved in Spain, because you're putting builders out of work. If it takes 6 months to construct something rather than 18, so we've had a bit of
poor old bricklayer.
Yeah, that's right. I know. So we've had a bit of resistance, but we've got there in the end. But I can see that. I can see the market heading that way, and already some large scale apartment developments are being built in that fashion. of a sort, and that's that again has proved very popular with buyers.
But if you're predominantly in the foreign market and the second home market, I guess, not so focused on local buyers, and in that segment, so the second home and foreign segment, of your clients, what are they looking for? Are they kind of indifferent between? Does some come in? I presume some come in, they want new, and others don't want new, and some are indifferent. But what is it? How does it work out? And then of course, as the agents can steer people in one direction or another.
Yeah.
But how does it work out in the end today in this segment that I've identified, so the foreign and second home segment? What's
it's really
30%, 50%? What's the overall?
I looked at the stats for 2022 and 2021, and it's pretty much 50-50 both years. Okay. And, I think that's the way that we try and capture our leads, because we advertise not only new developments, but we also advertise what we call prolific resale developments. So places that have already been established and built, and people know them. They may have holidayed there already, or they've got friends who bought there. So I think that's mainly because of the marketing that we do. But I'd like to see the figures across the board from a number of agents, because it would be very interesting. And you're right what you say about steering people in certain directions. I mean, when I first arrived on the coast 20 years ago, there used to be, it was almost like not a timeshare philosophy, that's the wrong word, but there was a pattern that we were trained, which was show a client a few dodgy resales with dodgy kitchens and bathrooms.
Put-offs. The put-offs, no?
And then you take them to the new development down the road with the amazing show home, and then you sell them a bit of fresh air. And that's what you go for, because it looks amazing, it feels amazing, it tastes amazing. Okay, you've got to wait a little bit, but wow, it's better than those grotty things that you saw half an hour earlier. So those days have gone, predominantly gone, because I think clients now have far more research than they were 20 years ago. They kind of know where they want to be, what they want to do, how much they want to spend. And they're often telling us, they'll say, what about that development, Dominion Beach down the road? I've heard about that. We're like, oh, hang on a minute. So I think things have moved on, and you can't, I say you can't, but I think some agents still do hoodwink clients and sell new stock, even though it's, pretty
not
poor.
It's not the best choice for the client.
Yeah, client. I mean, we have developments, for instance, that they might be 300,000 for a 2-bed apartment, and it's not great. It's in an area like a little bit of wilderness, but 5 minutes up the road, you can buy, for the same price, you can buy a fantastic resale apartment on a beautiful development and move in tomorrow, kind of thing. So, yeah, you got to be careful.
So, what's this? Is there a price difference? I mean, if you were to buy the resale to new, assuming you've got new product which is key in hand, ready to move into, and a similar product that is 5 years old and has been used, is being sold by a prior owner. I remember a few years ago seeing some people talking about this unjustifiable premium for new, and that you could 20, 30, I mean, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a significant price that you could buy. Not a bad, the resale, of course, you have to, in many cases, you do some painting or some sort of cosmetic, because it just for preferences, but or not. But most of the time, there's this sort of feeling that you have to do something to improve the condition, and that puts off a lot of people.
Yeah, it does. It does. And, there certainly is a new build premium. I think that's accepted around the world. And normally I would estimate it's between 5 and 10% of, an identical unit that's 5 or 10 years old, which of course is very hard to find an identical unit, because a lot of these new developments, they are built for today's clients. So they tend to have a few more things, like a few more amenities on site. They might have a heated pool. They might have 24-hour security. They might have a co-working space, which adds value to the buying proposition. So although you're buying the same square meters as the resale in the development next door, you're actually buying more things that the community can offer. But yeah, I think there's always a premium for new build. The interesting thing is that if you can secure a property in a new development that's offered on, say, day one, and the prices are genuine, almost like pre-launch prices with a discount, then you can do quite well out of it. I know that Taylor Wimpey, for instance, which is a very well-known UK-based house builder, That's what they do. They always, and they're very open about it. They'll say, look, we're going to be releasing this new development tomorrow. The prices are starting at 300,000, and we're going to put the prices up in 3 months, and then again in 6 months and 9 months, and they do. And so you'll find, I wish it was during the pandemic. It was during the recession, the 2008 thing. And they had a building, a development in San Pedro de Alcántara next to Puerto Banús, and they were selling 3-bed apartments for, I think, 295,000 euros. And now, secondhand ones there are selling for 500,000. So they've almost doubled in price in 10, 12 years. So, but they're very open about that. And we say to clients, look, if you invest on day one, you're going to get the best price.
In conclusion, in the Costa del Sol, the new development market is just ticking on. It's neither going, it sounds like it's characterized at the moment, if anything, by a certain shortage.
I think there's a slight shortage of supply. We thought, and just to go back to what we said last month, we noticed the drop off in quarter four. And I expected that to continue into quarter one, but oh no, I've been completely surprised. Quarter one has started like the first half of last year. We have seen increasing numbers of inquiries. We've seen increasing numbers of visits and also sales. So we're just over halfway through the month of January. We've had our best January on record in terms of sales numbers and revenue, and as I say, normally it's a 50-50 split, but this month it's all been new. It's all been new stock. And we've sold stuff over the phone, via Zoom, and I think what it is it's people who maybe got spooked quarter three, quarter four with all the headwinds that were coming our way with the inflation, the cost of living crisis, interest rates. I think people now have kind of got over that shock of those things. And I think the messages from a lot of governments is that it's okay, things are calming down. Certainly inflation seems to be coming down. Interest rates are forecasted to come down. So I think people now are going, okay, yeah, we understand. We're going to go again. And that's what we're seeing and noticing here on the ground.
Very good. Well, that's encouraging. And let's see, it's early days in this year. Let's see what happens. But like I said at the beginning, I think that the overall sales figures are trending down.
Yeah.
That was but only trending down in year-on-year terms. They're still quite near record highs. But let's see where they are. So I was sent a question, which I'll read to you and see what you say. If there are more than 2 interested parties in a property, what happens? I've been in it. So, I'm paraphrasing. I've been in a situation once that it seems there's no mechanism in place to allow a bidding war to take place, or even allow any offer above the asking price to try and secure the property. Are there any legal issues or rules to prevent offers over asking price being placed, or is it simply that agencies want to close the deal to get the commission at the ceiling prices that has already been established? And a follow-up. Second part of the question is, if 2 buyers both place an offer at the asking price or at a similar price, then what criteria is used to choose who gets the property without discrimination? And this is specifically in Catalonia, but it has to be the same there's no regional Catalan laws that decide, no, you can't offer more than the asking price. It's free, right? You can offer as much as you want.
You can offer exactly what you want. And we don't get it often, but we've had a couple, 3 examples of properties that have gone for above asking price because we had a little bit of an auction situation emerge, which is something as a buyer you don't want to get involved in, because then you're going to be paying a higher price than the asking price. Whether it's the right price or not is another matter. But if you really want the property and you've got the money to do it, then we would always say, look, it's your choice, and we will always give you a guide on what the property is truly worth. And of course, greed can get in the way. If you've got 2 or 3 buyers after the same thing, it's like any auction, isn't it? If you really want something and you're prepared to pay over the odds, then you'll pay over the odds.
And you're not paying over the odds. I mean, if the vendor is in the happy position of having a queue of people, several people want to buy, then let them fight it out on price.
Yeah, because you can put a deposit down, so you can agree. So say, for instance, I wanted to buy your house and we agreed a price. I would pay you a reservation deposit normally, and that would fix the deal, give us a little bit of time to look at the legals and all those sorts of things. But if you had a better offer from somebody else, there's nothing really stopping you from taking that offer. You might, in the contract that we have initially, it might be that, hang on a minute, if you sell it from under my nose, then you might have to give me a little penalty. But if it's only a few thousand and somebody else is offering you 20,000 more, you'd be absolutely right to take that.
It might be worth your while taking it. So there's no legal reason why you can't offer more than the asking price. No. That's the first part of the question.
No, absolutely.
And the second part, so what if you get two equal offers, two buyers prepared to pay the same amount? And how do you, couldn't you be in any position to be accused of discrimination or anything if you go for one rather than the other? If they're all both offering this exactly the same amount of money, and I presume sometimes actually you would go for the buyer that looks like the safer option to complete.
Yes, that's what normally happens. So I don't think there's any bias involved other than which buyer is in the best position, and that's the one I would go with. So I would speak to each agent and say, okay, your buyer and your buyer, tell me the situation. Tell me, do they need a mortgage? How long do they want to, complete? Blah 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 blah. And the one that sounds like less hassle is the one that I would say, it's yours,
regardless of their race or sex or preferences. I mean, it makes sense. The vendor just wants to get. If you're selling, that's the only issue is. Who's more reliable? Yeah, it shouldn't come into it any other matter. The only thing that I would say, and I'm being really honest, is obviously in the current climate, if it's money coming from Russia, there's a chance that it might never get out because of the sanctions and various things. So that's the only thing to really kind of bear in mind. And we've had people saying, my client's Russian, but he's got money in Dubai or wherever. Still, you need to get a lawyer just to check that the money is available for purchase. Otherwise, you could be waiting a long time for that money to be released. So you got to act a bit smart. But just one little story to tell you before we sign off. I had a lovely client who I've been working with for about 2 years. No, it was about 18 months, trying to find a really good place. And we found somewhere. It was actually in Los Flamingos Golf Resort, lovely place, which I knew really well. I was living there at the time, and I took him to look at this villa, and I think it was priced at 1.3 million. I think it was, which wasn't about, sounds a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but it wasn't a bad price in fact, it was a very good price for that area. And my client thought, he took a look at it on a Saturday morning. He said, I can make this work. This is really good. I really want it. And I said to him, well, look, they've just had another viewing. In fact, as we walked in, the other people were coming out, and I said, I think they're going to make an offer. And we ended up making the same offer on the property as the other clients. So and the agent who was listing the property said, look, we don't want to get into a bun fight here. The first person to pay 10%, which is the sum that you would normally pay to sign a private purchase contract, the first person to do that and sign contracts gets the house. So we transferred over the phone, I think it was 120,000 into the lawyer's bank account, got the lawyer to work on a Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning to get the contract signed. So our client signed the contract, paid 120,000 as a 10% deposit on the final agreed price, and flew home thinking, great, I've just got a really good deal. I've paid 10% and I've got somebody else out of the way, another buyer who was also after the property. We get a phone call. The client goes back Sunday night. We get a phone call Monday morning from the lawyer saying, I'm really sorry, but the other buyer has come back with an offer of 1.4 million and has completely blown everybody out of the water. And the owner is minded to accept. So we're like, well, hang on a minute, because if the owner accepts that other offer, okay, they're getting another 200,000 euros, but they've got to pay our money back. Anyway, it was more than that. I think they offered 1.5 or 1.6, just blew us out of the water. But what it meant was that the vendor had to return 120,000 euros and pay us 120,000 euros penalty. And they did. So my client, for coming to Marbella for a weekend, made 120,000 euros. And he said to me, can we do this again next weekend? But he made 120 grand. For doing nothing, for transferring a bit of money. And well, but it was a lucky break.
It was a lucky break. It doesn't happen often, and he wasn't that in love with the house that it caused him any emotional pain. But it was funny. Can I come and do this every weekend? So you can if you want.
Very good. Well, that was. I hope that answers. I mean, it's clear. There's no reason for bidding more, and there's no risk of discrimination, because it's in the vendor's interest, we'll just go with the best looking offer, and whoever signs the reservation and pays the deposit the quickest.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's also good to remind people who are listening, if you do have any questions, to let us know. Just our email addresses will be at the foot of this video, so let us know.
Put them in the comments.
Yeah, just let us know if there's any questions, and we can cover them next time as we go through. So unless there's anything else, Mark, we should.
Nope.
Only 5 minutes over.
We're
time.
getting better. We're getting
better.
We're getting tight. Yeah. We're getting better at this, Sean.
You've called me a windbag, an old timer today. Any more insults before I go?
No. You're like a guru to me, Sean.
Oh yes, and you too. Likewise. Listen, thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day. I can see the sun's coming out.
Yeah.
So you enjoy yourself, and we'll catch up next month.
Speak next month. Yeah.
Many thanks, Mark.
Thanks, then. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.